Before I tell you where this is going, let me ask you something first. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'm always curious who's out there listening to these things at midnight. And sometimes, the best thing you can ever do is nothing. Just wait. Let people show you exactly who they are, and then make one quiet move that changes everything. I bought my house on a Tuesday in October. I remember the exact moment I got the keys. The agent handed them over in a little envelope, one of those craft paper ones with my name written in blue pen. And I sat in my car in the parking lot of the title company for probably 12 minutes just holding them. Didn't call anyone. Didn't post anything. Just sat there with the envelope in my lap, and the heat turned up because it was cold and I needed a minute to let it be real before the world got to have an opinion about it. I was 31. I'd spent 4 years eating lunch at my desk, skipping trips, buying store-brand everything, and telling myself it would matter someday. I drove a car with a cracked dashboard and a passenger side window that got stuck every time the temperature dropped below 40. I didn't care. I had a number in my head and I hit it. And then I hit the one above it, and then I closed on a 1,940 square foot house in a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes from my office, with a backyard that backed up to a creek, and a kitchen with enough counter space that I actually wanted to cook in it. I painted the living room myself. Took me a full weekend and one very long Monday evening. It's a warm gray-green, one of those colors that looks completely different depending on what time of day it is. In the morning, it's almost sage. By evening, it goes deep. Almost slate. I picked it off a sample card at the hardware store and second-guessed it the entire time I was rolling it on, and then I stepped back and I knew immediately I was right. The spare room had a window that faced the backyard. I put a reading chair in it, one of those low-slung ones in rust-colored fabric that I found at an estate sale for $60. I was planning to use the room as a home office eventually. There was no rush. I just liked that it existed. I liked that I had a door I could close. My brother, he's 27, had been living with my parents since he graduated. He worked some hours at a bar near their house, picked up shifts when he felt like it. He wasn't struggling in any dramatic way. He just hadn't done anything yet. My parents always had a reason for him. He was figuring himself out. He needed time. He'd always been the one they worried about in a way that translated into protecting him from any consequence of not trying. I loved him. I still do. But I knew exactly who he was. My parents lived 40 minutes away from my house. I had dinner with them every few weeks, kept things easy, called my mom on Sundays. We had a functional relationship. I knew how to navigate it. What I hadn't figured out yet was that they had been quietly building towards something the whole time I was minding my own business. It started at Thanksgiving. My cousin hosted. Big house out in the suburbs, the kind of holiday where there are 3 tables and someone's always making a run to get more ice. My brother was there, my parents were there, assorted relatives. I was having a good time. I was on my second glass of wine and talking to my aunt about her garden when my mom appeared at my elbow. "We need to talk to you," she said. Not quietly. In the tone she uses when she's already decided something and is informing you of the outcome. My dad materialized on the other side. Classic. My brother was looking at the middle distance across the room like he wished he could dissolve into the wallpaper. "Your brother needs a more stable situation," my mom said. "He needs his own space to get himself together." I waited. "We think he should move into your spare room," my dad said, "just temporarily. 6 months, maybe less." There it was. I looked at my brother. He finally made eye contact, gave me something between a grimace and a shrug. He hadn't asked me. They had decided, told him, and now they were presenting it to me at Thanksgiving in front of half our family so that saying no would feel like a scene. I know would feel like a scene. I know this move. I grew up watching it happen to other people. I just never thought I'd be the one standing there holding a wine glass while my parents redistributed my house. I said, "I hear you. Let me think about it." My mom's face shifted. She'd been expecting a yes or a fight, and I'd given her neither. I smiled, topped off my wine, and went back to talking about my aunt's garden. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I was devastated, I wasn't, but because I was already thinking, I am not a reactive person by nature. I don't slam doors or send long text messages at midnight. What I do is think. I sit with something until I understand the shape of it, and then I figure out what to do. By the time I got home and made tea and sat down at my kitchen table, I was clear. I was not going to let my brother move in. Not out of cruelty. Not because I didn't care about him. But because I had spent 4 years making this possible, and I was not going to hand over my spare room and my peace and my carefully chosen life to a situation that was going to become permanent the moment it started. I knew how it would go. 6 months would become 8. 8 would become, he just needs a little more time. And I would be the person who cooked dinner for 3 and felt vaguely guilty for resenting it. I also knew my parents were not going to accept a simple no. So I needed to move before they did. I texted my friend the next morning. Her name is Britt. She's a few years older than me. She owns a small interior design business, and she is one of those people who has an almost supernatural ability to see around corners. I've known her since my 2nd year out of college. She was the first person I told when I found the house. I need your advice. I texted her. The Thanksgiving thing happened. She called me within 4 minutes. I explained the whole thing. She listened without interrupting, which is one of her best qualities. When I finished, she said, "Okay, so you need the room to already be occupied." Just like that. "I've been thinking the same thing," I said. "Do you actually want a roommate, or do you just need cover?" I thought about it for real. I'd always assumed I'd eventually rent the spare room. The mortgage math made it genuinely helpful, and I'd been putting it off mostly because I hadn't needed to yet. Having someone in that room who paid rent and stayed out of my way and was not my 27-year-old brother, that was not a terrible outcome. "Both," I said. "Then post the listing today," Britt said, "before they make another move." I posted that afternoon. I wrote the listing carefully. I was honest about what I wanted: a quiet professional, no pets due to my allergies, someone who kept reasonable hours. I priced it about $20 below market because I wanted the right person more than I wanted to maximize what I made. I mentioned the backyard creek. I mentioned the reading chair in the room because it was staying. Within 48 hours, I had 11 responses. I went through each one with real attention. I wasn't looking for the most impressive resume. I was looking for a certain tone. The kind of person who gives you information without being asked, who mentions small things because they think they matter, who isn't trying to sell you anything. You can tell a lot from how someone writes an email asking to see a room. One message stood out immediately. His name was Patrick. He was 34, worked in urban planning for the city, had been renting for years and was looking for something stable while he saved toward buying his own place. He mentioned, unprompted, that he worked long hours during the week and was usually in bed by 10. He said he liked to cook on weekends and would be happy to coordinate if we ever overlapped in the kitchen, or he could stay out of the way entirely, whichever I preferred. He included a reference from his previous landlord, a phone number, and a note that said he'd understand if the room was already taken. I messaged him back within the hour and asked if he could come see the place that Saturday. He arrived exactly on time. Not 5 minutes early to seem eager, not 3 minutes late to seem relaxed. Exactly on time. He had a quiet handshake, noticed the living room color and said something accurate about it, asked one question about the backyard and didn't try to fill silence with small talk. After he left, I stood in my kitchen for about 30 seconds and then texted Britt. I found him. I did the background check. Everything came back clean. We signed a lease 2 weeks after Thanksgiving with a move-in date the first weekend of December. I didn't tell my parents. Not right away. That wasn't a calculated cruelty. It was just that there was nothing to report yet, and I'd learned that the less I volunteered with my family, the less I had to manage. My mom called me the first week of December, a Wednesday evening while I was making dinner. "Have you thought more about your brother?" she asked. "I have," I said. "And I have a tenant moving in this weekend," I said. "The spare room is rented." The silence lasted long enough that I had time to turn down the heat under my pan. "What?" she said. "I've been thinking about it for a while," I said, which was technically true. The mortgage math made sense and I found someone great. He moves in Saturday. "You didn't say anything about this at Thanksgiving. You surprised me at Thanksgiving," I said. I needed time to think. So you went and found someone without talking to us? Mom, I said, and I kept my voice genuinely gentle. It's my house. She was quiet again. I could hear my dad in the background, her telling him in a low voice. I stirred my pan and waited. Your brother needs somewhere to go, she finally said. I know, I said. I'm sorry I can't be that place. I hope you guys can figure something out. She hung up before I did, which was fine. My brother came by that Saturday. Not Patrick's moving in Saturday. The Saturday before. He texted me Friday night, can I come talk to you tomorrow? No capitals, 1 question mark. That's how he texts. I said yes. He showed up mid-morning with coffee he picked up on the way. 1 for him, 1 for me. Remembered how I take it. That's the thing about my brother, he's not a bad person. He can be thoughtful. He just hadn't ever been pushed to build anything. We sat at my kitchen table. He looked around the house the way he always does, taking it in, and I noticed he glanced toward the hallway where the spare room was. Mom told me, he said. Yeah. Was this about me? He asked. Like, did you do it because of me? I respected the question enough to actually think about it before I answered. I've been thinking about renting it for a while, I said. The conversation at Thanksgiving made me move faster than I might have, but I wasn't going to say yes. He nodded. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. I figured, he said. Not because I don't care about you, I said. But because it wouldn't have been good for either of us. You know that. He was quiet for a moment. Mom thinks you're being selfish. I know. Are you? I looked at my brother, 27 years old, sitting in my kitchen that I paid for, asking me if I was selfish for not handing over a room in my house that I also paid for, because our parents decided he needed it. I don't think protecting what I worked for is selfish, I said. I think it's the only way any of this makes sense. He didn't argue. That was actually the most hopeful thing about the conversation. He didn't argue, and he didn't leave angry. He finished his coffee. He asked to see the backyard because he'd never been out there. We stood on the little deck for a few minutes in the cold, and he said the creek sounded nice. I agreed. Before he left, he said, I need to figure something out. Yeah, I said. You do. I'm going to. I believed him, a little. More than I had before. Patrick moved in on a gray Saturday in early December with 3 carloads of things and a systematic efficiency that I found immediately reassuring. He had boxes labeled by room. He didn't ask me where anything was, he just found it. He set up a small mat by the front door for his shoes without being asked. By that evening, it was like he'd always been there. Not in an intrusive way, but in the way that a house settles. He cooked something that smelled like garlic and thyme. He cleaned up completely. He said goodnight from the hallway at a reasonable hour, and that was that. My mom didn't call for 2 weeks. When she did, her voice was careful in the way it gets when she's approaching something sideways. How is the tenant? She asked. Good, I said. It's working out well. Is he respectful? Very. She made a small sound. Your father thinks we push too hard, she said, which was as close to an acknowledgement as I was likely to get from that direction. I appreciate you saying that, I said, meaning it. Your brother, she said, and then paused. He's been looking at apartments. I sat up a little. Really, he found one he likes. He's going to need a cosigner. I waited to see if this was the new angle. We're going to do it, she said. Your father and I. I exhaled. That's good, Mom. That's really good. He needs to learn, she said quietly, like she was saying it more to herself than to me. You learned. He needs to. We talked for another 20 minutes about other things. Her garden, my dad's back, the holiday plans. Normal. The thing that had been sitting between us all month had shifted, not disappeared, but moved, into something we could work around. Patrick has been here for 5 months now. He is exactly what his email suggested he would be. He pays rent on the 1st, every month, without a reminder. He keeps the bathroom cleaner than I do. On Sunday mornings, sometimes I hear him in the kitchen, and he'll make enough coffee for 2 and leave a mug on the counter without making it into a thing. We are not close friends, but we are good at sharing space, which is its own kind of thing worth having. My brother signed a lease on a one-bedroom in February. He moved in with very little furniture and apparently has been going to IKEA in stages, which is probably the most responsible slow rollout I've ever heard of from him. He texted me a photo of his assembled bookshelf with the caption, "Look what I did," and I sent back a thumbs up and then a real response, "Actually proud of you." He called me last week. We talked for 40 minutes. He told me about a girl he's been seeing, about a shift manager position at work he's thinking about applying for. He sounded different, not transformed, just a little more solid, like someone who knows what his own kitchen looks like. I walked out to the backyard after we hung up. It was a warm evening for April, still light at 7. The creek moving fast from the week's rain. I stood on the deck for a while just listening to it. My house. My decision. My life. I didn't fight anyone. I didn't give a speech. I didn't send a long message laying out my position. I just moved quietly and let the situation explain itself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing, as long as you've already done what needed to be done. That's the thing nobody tells you about boundaries. They don't actually require a confrontation. They just require you to be already standing somewhere before someone else tries to stand there instead. The room is occupied. It has been for months. There's a man who wakes up early and keeps the floors clean and leaves coffee on the counter on Sunday mornings, and the door to that room closes all the way, and everything on the other side of it is exactly what I built it to be. I hope you're watching this from somewhere that feels like yours. If it doesn't yet, it can. It takes longer than it should, and people will try to borrow from it before you've even finished building it, but it can. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one. I've thought a lot about why things went the way they did. Not just with my brother, but with all of it. The house, the decision, the quiet way it resolved itself over months instead of one loud argument at a dinner table. The honest answer is that nothing that happened was an accident. When I bought that house, I wasn't just signing paperwork. I was finishing something I'd started years earlier when I decided that what I built with my own hands was mine to protect. That decision, made quietly, long before Thanksgiving, is what made every other decision easier. I wasn't scrambling to figure out what I believed when my parents sat down next to me with their plan already made. I already knew. The work I'd done on myself before that moment was the only reason I could stay calm in it. That's the part nobody talks about. People see the outcome, the tenant already in the room, the conversation that didn't turn into a fight, and they think it was some clever strategy. It wasn't. It was just the natural result of knowing what I valued and having already acted on it. You can't manufacture that in the moment. Either you've done the thinking beforehand or you haven't. My brother is a good example of the other side of that equation. He hadn't done the thinking yet. Not because he was a bad person, he isn't, but because nobody had ever required him to. Every time he got close to a real consequence, something cushioned it. My parents, always with the best intentions, kept removing the pressure that would have made him stronger. What looks like love in the short term can be the thing that stalls someone for years. What I watched happen to him? Slowly, once he had his own apartment, and his own lease and his own IKEA bookshelf to assemble by himself, was someone finally starting to form. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't call me with some revelation. He just started sounding more solid. That's what happens when a person has to carry their own weight. The weight itself builds them. I think about integrity a lot in relation to this story. Not integrity as a grand concept, but as something small and daily. The integrity of keeping the promise I made to myself when I was eating store-brand everything and watching my savings account move by inches. I told myself that what I was building was mine. When the moment came to defend that, I didn't have to find courage from nowhere. The courage was already built in because the integrity had been there all along. Intelligence, in my experience, is mostly just paying attention. Paying attention to patterns, to people, to what's actually being said underneath what's being said. Underneath what's being said. My parents didn't show up at Thanksgiving with a request. They showed up with a conclusion. Recognizing that difference, quickly, without drama, is what let me respond the right way instead of reacting. Patrick is still here. My brother is still in his apartment. My parents and I talk every few weeks. Easy and uncomplicated. None of this came from a confrontation. It came from a decision made quietly, in advance, by someone who had already figured out where she stood. That's all any of this ever is. You figure out where you stand. Then you stand there and you let the world arrange itself around that fact.